In progress.
And then there's this.
Oh, good. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Brian.
Came the most beautiful beginning. The depths of despair fade to reveal hope everlasting. And speaking of hope, those of you that opened up your windows this morning and looked outside, welcome to Northwest Indiana, right? So I thought for today's invocation, instead of focusing on spring as a noun, as the season, I would focus on spring as a verb, as an action, as an opportunity that all of us have in our daily lives. To become resilient, to grow, to come into being, to leap with joy, to arise. So, as we each embark on the week ahead, let us spring into our endeavors with joy and hope. Godspeed.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, we have a special visitor here today, Lenny Corso from the special friends of ours, the Kiwanis, and he has an announcement.
Thank you, President Deb. Appreciate the opportunity. And thank you, Ellen DeMartinez, for making this happen today. I was going to take the blame for the snow because I washed both my cars on Friday. But now I'm going to blame the people that mowed the grass on Saturday. So we're assuming the responsibility. The Kiwanis, besides all of you are familiar with the collaboration we do with the Rotary Club for the Veterans Dinner, which has been a sold out success every time we've organized. We also have, the Kiwanis have started the Salute the Recruits. And this is a program in which we take individuals who are graduating from high school and they're going right into the military. In 2013, John Bowker is the one that started this program, and I joined him, I think, around 2016, 17. And it was at a veterans lunch before we moved to dinner time, and he basically indicated, he says, you know, the kids who get scholarships, they get the recognition. The kids that are the athletes, they get their winter jackets. But the kids that go into the military, they get nothing. And that's how the Salute the Recruits started. I have never forgotten my day when I went into the military. It was very cold December morning of 1966, right into the Vietnam War. I remember that lonely bus trip down to Indianapolis. You could hear a pin drop on that bus. And then after the yelling and screaming occurred in Indianapolis, we got back on the bus and we had that long, quiet trip to Fort Knox, Kentucky. Got in about 2 o'clock in the morning, and all the yelling and screaming started at that time. So that was our welcome into the military back in the day. Most people do not know that the bulk of people during the Vietnam era, from the stats that I read, we had 27 million people from 1964, 63, 64 to about 1974 that were eligible. We had about 2.5 million people who served. There was about 275 to 300,000 that never registered for the draft or they went to Canada. It was a difficult time. And at that time, one of my colleagues who went into the military right after high school, within 2 years while I was still in college, he lost his life to friendly fire in Vietnam. And then one of my other high school classmates, he went down with a plane, South China Sea, no plane and no bodies were ever recovered. Also, I printed this off. How many of you remember the 13 military people who were killed at Kabul Airport last August? One of the 13 was from my hometown. His name was Corporal Roberto Sanchez, 22 years old, very young. The funeral that he had, his body was flown into Grissom Air Force Base. And for those of you that know the state of Indiana, Grissom Air Force Base, Logansport is about 10 to 15 miles. The Patriot Guard, which is a motorcycle group made up of a lot of former military, when the hearse got to Logansport, the last of the motorcycles leaving Grissom Air Force Base. I was unable to attend, but I watched. That was probably about an hour and a half as the hearse went by the city building on its way to the funeral home. It was an amazing tribute. So when you stop and think of where we were at in the 60s and where we're at today, I look at everyone out here, probably have grandsons and granddaughters. Maybe some of you have sons or daughters that are in that 18 to 20-year-old range. And stop and think of the recruits today who were barely born pre 9/11. Most of them have been born after 9/11. So stop and think how the parents feel when their child decides to join the military, especially during these difficult times. In this case of Corporal Sanchez, he was in Syria, and then his unit was transferred over to provide security at the Kabul airport. And 13 military people passed away, and there were over 200 other people that were killed in the same blast. So the Salute the Recruits, when those kids come to the event, our effort is to not only make sure that they have a positive experience. Obviously, we're not going to be talking about death. I think everybody that joins the military knows that there is a risk. But we are trying to also provide meals for their parents or significant others on May 25th from 5:30 to 8:30. We've left some cards on your tables. And you just never know. I'm sure that the family of Corporal Sanchez, when he joined 4 years out of high school, that he would not be around after the age of 22. So we feel that this is a great opportunity for us to show our appreciation for those that are going into the military. And we want to thank you, Kiwanis, for the $500 check, which will go to help pay for tickets for those recruits and for some of their parents. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lanny, and thank you for your service and your dedication and heart for all servicemen and women. Okay, Deb has a quick report on the awesome event that took place that she worked very hard planning, and tell us about that.
Well, a lot of us worked very hard on this event. Let me start by just asking if you were there, if you would stand. And if you were there, you worked. Thank you for your support. Couple other names. I did see somewhere on Zoom, but Doug and Doug Busby, Christina, Jackie Fioretti, somewhere Joe over there. I think who wasn't there. Also, I don't know if he's here. Mary Casca. So I think that was everybody, but it took all of us and more. I had asked my girls to come along because I wanted them to be apprised to the meeting and what we were talking about. And I understand, jumped right in and they were helping also. So we're going to just go with the pictures here real quick. So actually this picture here is all the interactors from 4 of the different high schools. And while we switch pictures, I'll just say we had 148 students from 6 schools, LaPorte, Michigan City, Marquette, Valpo High School, Chesterton, and Morgan Township. And this is a picture of all the kids, and I think a couple of the sponsors. Our speaker, you met, I put one of these on each too because I don't have any left now, but this was the final draft of what we did. Shayna spoke to us a few weeks ago. She gave us the student version, and I learned a few things. So did anybody know what a pick-me girl is? Did any of our helpers, were you in the room? Yeah, I don't know. All of us that were older had no idea what a pick-me girl was. But anyway, I guess it's somebody that's like, well, those are vulnerabilities for trafficking, I guess. So we did have, okay, so what I do want to share is I reached out to Matthew Johnson, and some of you may know that name because he works with Next Era Solar Energy. And we are slated to put solar on part of our farm. So I've been working with Matthew for probably about 1.5 years. And he's been very generous to this club. He helped support the golf outing last fall. I reached out and told him what we were doing. Because we were having 8 organizations there to talk to the students, and Next Year donated $2,000 to the event. And with that said, going down the line there, Faith was from Family Christian Counseling, who talked to kids about how this is prevalent and how she is counseling students here in Portage County. Something that really caught their attention, and one of the students at the end, when we have our conclusion and the students come up after their breakout sessions and share their response to the question that we give them, she indicated that one of the students that she's counseling right now is from one of the 6 schools, and that took kids by surprise. So Faith was from Family Christian Counseling. Amy Ring actually was a victim of trafficking, and she is running the anti-coalition Anti-Trafficking Coalition for all of Northwest Indiana. I told the kids I wanted them to listen up when they spoke because there were opportunities for them to get involved. And the topic of the conference was human trafficking in plain sight. What can you do? So that was their question. They had to come back and respond to. Some of the things that they could do is work with Pastor Greg Arthur, who is running the Free the Girls program. Now, Free the Girls is referring to actually freeing the girls. However, the program is donating used and new bras. And I forget how many, they collected thousands. And the women in the foreign countries can start their own little retail business to help them get out of trafficking. Lynn Johnson with Living Hope Ministries, Chief Jeff Ballin from the Valparaiso Police Department and a member of his staff talked to the kids about, well, first, I appreciated the fact that he introduced his social worker, and he did it in such a way that it was very inviting for the students to be able to reach out to the department and here is a person that you could be communicating with. Not me, the officer sitting here in the uniform, but a social worker who was a young woman. Denise Keike, I saw she's on Zoom today. She did a great job with the Caring Place, the Amanda Forum. Terry Griffin from Rahab's Daughters also runs Souls for Souls, which is an organization for shoe drives. So the kids walked away with some ideas for some drives to help women out of trafficking. And then Reverend Charles Studemeyer from Safe Chair works with a doctor out of Munster, and they're doing really good work over there. They each had their own booths out in the common area, so they got to talk to the kids. They had resources. The other thing that we did prior is I reached out to the Department of Homeland Security. They have all kinds of stuff on the Blue campaign. We have lots of posters. If you've got a school that is willing to post that and put these brochures in, I do have that. Thanks to James also for the radio interview with Sheena and the announcement for that. And I think if I've done that really fast, can you just run through those other pictures?
Here?
Yeah, that's Shayna. You met her.
Okay.
This is when the students are done. A member of each group comes up and they share their perspective on that question.
The big one?
Yeah.
This
Okay.
one. Oh, yeah.
Yep. Very good. Statement.
Once in a while, somebody goes way above and beyond service. So having to know all the interviews, Zoom meetings, phone calls, and her entire vacation and what's it?
See about today.
So this is an appreciation for going extremely above and beyond, and your dedication and heart for these girls is amazing. Okay, next we're in for another treat and a great speaker today. And I'd like to introduce to you, who's coming on Zoom, my friend, Dr. Gloria Burgess. She is a leadership expert. She is a thought leader, trusted advisor, consultant, executive coach, and sought after inspirational speaker. She's triumphed over extreme poverty, racism, and sexism, and demonstrates that your life circumstances do not have to predict your destiny. Fueled by the ethos of artistry, dignity, and social justice, Gloria is a pioneer in transformational leadership. She excels in working with teams and organizations to shift dynamics around leading. An acclaimed leader and international speaker, Gloria has impacted hundreds of thousands of lives in 35 countries. She shared the stage with luminaries such as Les Brown, Dr. John C. Maxwell, Marianne Williamson, Nick Vujicic, and Immaculate, well, Gloria, I'll have to tell you. Sorry, didn't do my homework on pronouncing that one. Gloria's been featured on numerous television radio programs, including NPR, British Radio, and others. Her clients have included Microsoft, Starbucks, Boeing, etc., etc. She could tell us more if she wants. I met Gloria through the Maxwell Leadership, and her husband is a maestro. He leads orchestras, and together they do an awesome inspirational, musical, poetic presentation on leadership. And Gloria is just such a kind, generous person who lives her life to add values to others. And I think you are just going to love listening to her today, zooming in from Washington State. Thank you, Gloria.
Thank you so much, Deb. Well, I am delighted and honored to be here with you today as we lift up and celebrate your amazing work here at Rotary. So Deb, thank you for inviting me today, for shouting my name. I appreciate that. I also want to congratulate each of you and thank you for your magnificent devotion and service as a Rotarian. Just hearing about these few projects this morning where I am, this afternoon where you are, was just warming my heart. So thank you. Thank you so much. And I also want to thank you and appreciate you for your extraordinary leadership during these trying times. What you do is the very foundation of what I call legacy leadership. Now, most of us think about legacy as something that happens after we die, right? When other folks get to stand up and say wonderful things about you. But here's the deal. Even though you're there, you're not alert enough to enjoy it, right? The truth is, we leave a legacy each and every moment of our lives. Whether we know it or not, we leave a footprint, a precious reminder of who we are in our families, in our communities, and in our organizations. So the greatest gift we can give others is to be conscious and intentional about the legacy we live, because how we live is how we lead. It's how we show up at work, how we show up in our families, how we show up here at Rotary. Whoever you are, whatever you do, in your role here and beyond, whatever you do, you are creating a legacy. Every phone call you make, every email, every text message, every meeting you attend, who and what you decide to include or exclude. Everything makes a difference. How we show up today actually shapes somebody else's tomorrow. Now, when it comes to leadership, remember I mentioned legacy leadership. When it comes to leadership, this is how I see it. Leadership is about taking a stand for what you believe. It's about expanding what you see as possible. Leadership is about creating the wind, creating the change, about stepping up, regardless of your title or your position. At the end of the day, leadership is about taking your seat at the table. Now, I've watched leaders all my life, and for the past 4.5 decades, I've been a leader. I have studied leaders. I've taught leaders. And these days, I write books about leadership. But that wasn't always the case. Can I just tell you something? For many years, I actually ran the other way. I ran away from leadership. In fact, I didn't even know what the word was. Am I talking to anybody out there? So today, I want to talk with you about a seat at the table. Why? Because I want to share a few things that I wish somebody had shared with me when I was working in IT in corporate America. Now, I'm using the word table as a metaphor for voice. Having a voice, using it wherever you go, in your family, at work, at school, in your community, wherever you happen to be. So let's talk about this seat at the table. We're going to talk about 3 things. Number 1, what does it mean to have a seat at the table? How do you show up when you get there? And number three, what is your responsibility at the table? Now, before I delve into these three things, I want to give you some additional context. I want to tell you just a bit more about me and why this topic is so important. When I was a little girl, I actually thought I lived in an all-Black town. I didn't know the meaning of segregation. And though I didn't have words for it at the time, I was actually ashamed. You see, when my family went to town, we had to drink from the water fountain that said colored. We had to go through the back door of the shops, and the shop owners called my mom and dad by their first names, but we had to call them Mr. and Mrs. Now, again, I had no words for it, but I felt that little in my stomach, right? Even as a little girl, I knew from that and more horrific experiences that someday I was going to make it impossible for other people to prejudge my parents, me, and my sisters simply because of the color of my skin. Now, I didn't know it, but that moment of awareness, that moment of setting my intention was a moment of leadership. Financially, my family was very poor, but I didn't know it. You know, we always had food to eat, and my mom's table was always the welcome table. Everybody was welcome there. Everybody belonged there. And my mom would use her superpowers to transform our usual meal of cornbread and buttermilk to buttermilk and cornbread. When I was 9, we had moved from the South, and I remember living in a very rough neighborhood in Detroit, Michigan. I remember seeing someone get stabbed to death in front of my house. By the time I was 12, we had moved 10 or 11 times. And several times a year, we'd go back home, back to Mississippi. And I remember my mom spending the whole day beforehand frying chicken. Otherwise, we'd have to wait through the 18-hour drive before we could eat at my grandfather's house because no restaurant would serve us along the way. Now, we always left right around midnight under the cover of darkness, so we wouldn't be stopped for a DWB. Yes, that's right, driving while Black. Now, I have to tell you, I am grateful for all of these moments because they've made me who I am as a human being. They've made me who I am as a businesswoman, as an educator, as a parent, as a community steward. And I'm so grateful because all of these moments have formed me. They've shaped me into who I am and how I make a difference, how I make the world a little bit better off than the way I found it. I'm grateful because all of these moments, all of these experiences qualify me to have a seat at the table. Now I'm going to repeat that. All of these moments, experiences qualify me to have a seat at the table. If you take only one thing away from this talk today, the one thing I want you to take away is gratitude. Gratitude for the life you have, all of it, because the life you have is what qualifies you. Now, I am qualified, not because I have a PhD and 4 other degrees. I'm qualified not because I worked in corporate America. I'm qualified not because I was the very first African-American to become the highest ranking executive in the IT industry. Not because I'm an award-winning author and poet. I'm qualified not because of what people think of me or what people project onto me. I am qualified just because. Just because. And here's some good news. So are you. You are qualified too. Now, if you're taking notes, I want you to write this down. We're talking about a seat at the table. And this is not just any old seat. This is your seat at the table. So let's talk about those three things I mentioned earlier: having a seat, how you show up at the table, and your responsibility when you get there. So number one, here's what it means to have a seat at the table. To have a seat at the table means to be included and to belong. But inclusion is not the same thing as belonging, right? Inclusion means you're at the table, you're in the seat. Yay, hallelujah, right? But you want to be more than just a seat warmer, right? Belonging means you are welcome up in here. You're welcome. All of you is welcome. Belonging means you're valued, your presence is valued, your perspective is valued. Belonging also means that your voice is valued. Your voice is wanted, appreciated, and your voice is understood, which means you don't have to explain yourself over and over and over again. You don't have to wonder, am I really being heard? That's what belonging is. Now, I'm going to share a little bit of history with you. It's radical and it's deliciously subversive. Now, as I share this bit of history with you, I want you to listen closely. And I want you to listen specifically for the character qualities of the people who show up and write them down. Yeah, I'm going to give you a quiz afterwards, okay? All right. My father, Ernest McEwen Jr., was born in that same little town I was born in, Oxford, Mississippi. And when my dad was a little boy, he had two dreams. He wanted to live in a house with running water, and more than anything, he wanted to go to college. But how? You see, these were big, bad, audacious dreams for a young Black boy in the Jim Crow South of the 1930s. Dreams like this could get you killed. But you know what? That didn't faze my father. He talked to anyone who'd listen to his dreams, young, old, Black, white. He would tell you about his dreams. Well, now, my dad is 21, married with 3 little girls, including me, and he's working as a janitor at the University of Mississippi. He can work there, but he can't go to school there because it's still segregated. But he is one step closer to his dreams. And yeah, he's still talking about them to the students, to the professors, to anybody who'd listen. Well, one of those somebodies was a dean at Ole Miss, Dr. Love. And he met my dad. And when he heard his story, he just fell in love with him. Young man, I know someone who just might help you with your dream. Dr. Love introduced my dad to author and Nobel laureate, William Faulkner. The next day, my father walked up to Roanoke. Oh, Mr. McEwen, I've been waiting to meet you. I'd love to help you with your dream. Tell me, where do you want to go to college? Alcorn A&M. Well, that's a mighty fine school for Blacks. I want to pay for your tuition, your room and board. I want to help you find a job so you won't have to worry about pocket money. Well, sir, I can't accept your generous offer. I just don't see how I can ever pay you back. Oh, well, I don't expect you to pay me back. Mr. McEwen, the only thing I ask is that you pass this blessing on to somebody else when you're able to. Well, that's all. My father enrolled at Alcorn A&M, and he lived the rest of his life passing his blessings on to family, friends, coworkers, neighbors. In fact, if my dad was still alive, he'd be right here in this room, sitting next to you or you, encouraging you to always, always pass it on. So I know There are so many character qualities that show up in this little bit of history that I just shared with you. And I'm curious about what you might have heard. So please write them down. And I would love it if any of you are on Zoom. I don't know if you are, but you can put them in the chat. You know what? I know you're going to have a table talk about this. So I hope that you take these points that you wrote down to that table talk. So we just talked about what it means to have a seat at the table. All right, let's talk about point number 2. How do you show up when you're actually at the table? Well, you show up as a contributor. And that means contributing in the ways that only you can. So that means you don't show up as a parrot, parroting what other people say, right? You don't show up as a copycat, copying what other people do. You show up in your own 2 shoes as your authentic self. Now, I was that person who used to leave 50% of myself in the parking lot. I know that's a whole nother talk, right? These days, I bring it all in. Now, why am I saying you bring your whole self, you bring all of who you are, your authentic self? Because you are there at that table to bring your particular voice, a voice that exists nowhere else at that table. Now, there are close to 8 billion people on the planet. And you know what? Each one of us has a unique fingerprint, a unique footprint, and a unique voice print. In other words, there is only one of you in all time. And if you don't bring it, if you don't bring your voice, your perspective, your special genius, who will? So you're there at that table to bring your particular voice at this particular time in history. If you don't bring your contribution, your creativity, your special genius will be lost. And your family, your community, your team at work, the people right here in this room will miss out on your unique contribution. Now, in our interconnected global village, you show up with courage, with empathy, with humility, with respect. You show up with hope and gratitude and love and integrity, with vision. You show up with creativity and passion, perseverance, faithfulness. You show up with vulnerability. The vulnerability it takes to get out of your comfort zone and take a deep dive into your learning zone, into your creativity zone. Okay, so let's talk about number 3. What's your responsibility when you get to the table? There are 2 responsibilities. The first one is to build relationships, right? So that means it's not about you, right? It's about asking yourself, how am I in relationship with people who don't act like me, who don't look like me, who don't think like me, right? And building relationships is a process. And so you must be intentional to build those bridges, to forge those relationships. One conversation, one text, one cup of coffee at a time. So you bring your voice as a relationship builder and you bring it with an attitude, right? An attitude of service. And that's the second responsibility at the table, to be of service to people who are not yet there. Your responsibility is to invite them to the table. Why? Because you want to do for them what you wished somebody had done for you. This is all about each one pull one. Each one pull one. So that's what it means. That's what it means to have a seat at the table, to show up there and to be of service once you get there. Now, at the end of the day, that's what leadership is all about. That's what being at the table is all about. Valuing, honoring, celebrating, appreciating, respecting, lifting up, and serving other people. Now, I want to tell you a little secret. Leadership is not about what you do. Leadership is about who you are. It is not about your technical skills or your product know-how. It is about who you are. And if you're a person of faith like me, it is also about whose you are. In one of my books, Flawless Leadership, I talk more about this aspect of leadership. This is what we call the being realm of leadership. Now, most books, most articles, most of anything that you read about leadership focuses on knowing and doing, but not on being. And several years ago, when I was looking for a book that focused specifically on leadership and being, I couldn't find one. So I wrote it. Now, leadership is like a three-legged stool. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. It's like a three-legged stool, and the three legs are knowing, being, and doing. Okay, knowing, being, and doing. And if you take any one of those legs away, what do you have? Well, you have a lopsided stool, right? Okay, so we need all three, but being undergirds everything. Now I'm going to show you the cover of my book. All right, this is Flawless Leadership. And as you can see on the cover, there are these concentric circles. Now, my editor said it kind of looked like a tar-shaped, symbol. But that's not what this is. So as I talk about just a little bit about those concentric circles, I want you to think about leadership, because that's what this is all about, right? That ring of concentric circles is actually an Adinkra symbol, okay, which comes from the Akan people in West Africa. Okay, and the symbol of those interlocking circles is called Adinkrahine, which means leadership. Okay, so what do you think about those concentric circles as it relates to leadership? All right, again, you can put it in the chat box if you are able to do that. If I was in the room, I'd be having this interactive conversation with you. But for now, some of the things that I think about when I look at those concentric circles and how it relates to leadership is a connection, right? Interdependence, the ripple effect of who we are and what we do. Okay, it's round like a round table. Okay, and one of the things that I talk about in my own work is what goes around comes around, right? It also speaks to me of legacy leadership. So these are all the qualities that we've been talking about today. Now, I want to just put a pin on everything we've been talking about and share a poem with you. A number of years ago, I wrote this poem, and it's a poem about being at the table. This poem is about what it means to be human and what it means to be qualified. And the poem is called Song to Myself. Song to myself. It doesn't matter to me what you do or where you work. I want to know who you are when the sun goes down. It doesn't matter to me how much bread you can afford to put on your own table. I want to know if you will knead and wait and bake the bread and share your blessings at somebody else's table. I want to know if you can look into the eyes of the young woman who sleeps with fear each night, the one who dared to walk away from the hands that pummeled her. I want to know if you can share her pain. It doesn't matter to me what neighborhood you live in or what kind of car you drive. I want to know what drives you. I want to know what pierces your heart, awakens you at night, and inspires you to devote yourself to whomever or whatever moves you. I want to know How many times you've opened your heart and extended a hand to your homeless sister or brother. I want to know if you will sit in the quiet, dark hours between midnight and dawn, listening to another's heart song. I want to know if you will throw away your cloak and show your heart, if you will dare to wear your soul on the outside. It doesn't matter to me what you say you will do for others. I want to know if you will act with courage and conviction, if you will daily cradle the frail hand of your mother when she no longer knows your name. I want to know if you can look into the hazel, gray, or ebony eyes of a stranger and say yes to affirm your sister, your brother, yourself. It doesn't matter to me that you have a past. I want to know if you will celebrate your present, if you will take a stand, declare yourself, and sing, I am boldly and with rejoicing, not only to the stars at night, but to anyone, anywhere, without apologies or regrets. Folks, this is what it means to be qualified, to be a leader. This is what it means to bring your particular voice and take your particular seat at the table. Thank you. And Deb, I know we're right up against the hour here, so I'm going to hand it back to you.
Thank you so much. Told you she makes me cry. I need to say this. And Gloria, I wanted you to hear this. This group gave me a seat at the table. I dare come from Stark County and sit in this room at the other place. And a long time loved half of myself. And you've given me so much opportunity and so much growth. So that's why she gives me tears too. Thank you.
And thank you, Gloria.
Great. Can we give her another round? Now we know you don't make it through those first 2 weeks.
Okay, we had some guests to introduce. Oh, Gloria, we have been gifting these books, and this time we're gifting this one to our local library. And I'm sure
Thank you.
another one went to the women's shelter library, and one went to elementary school. So we
Thank
appreciate
you.
the book. It's
Really.
so wonderful.
Thank you.
The illustrations are great. The story's great. You guys need to get this.
Hi, everyone. We just had one yesterday. Mark, Sam, have I seen your name correctly? Boyer, sorry. He is he's the executive director at Valparaiso Senior Village, and he is here with James Simpson. So welcome, safe welcome.
Hi, Mark.
Thank you.
Did anybody else have an announcement? Debbie.
The one thing I forgot to say, on behalf of the Valparaiso Rotary Club, we gave the Phoenix Alliance $500, and then each one of our speakers and organizations gave them each $100.
I'm so glad an outbreaker does an ugly cry too. Hate that. Okay, next week we have roundtable discussions around the topics today. So I hope you took notes and prepared for that. And please come. And that is a big part of our relationship building process we've talked about a lot. And the week after that, Jose Padilla, the president of Valparaiso University, and the week after that, we'll have Mayor Murphy, so we have a big schedule ahead, information galore. Okay, let's stand and close. John, oh yeah, I told you that, remind me.
So some 30 years. To clean up a couple miles with the state route 69, which was a brand new highway at that time. To make sure it was kind of to pick up the highway, trash money. We made that obligation, brand new signs out there a year or two ago from the state. So our next spring is going to be the Gloria in the morning, 7:30 in the morning. We're going to be out there at hope to have more detail beforehand, but put it at 500 doors for the Casey's and the eye clinic is. But there's a couple things with this. We're not just asking you to do it for nothing. Okay? Whole makeup. So those of you may be struggling with attendance, minimal makeup, and Deb, you offered something. What was it?
I told you to take blame for that. Now it's time to close its ears. Free lunch for anybody at their next Rotary meeting.
We're bridal. There's a lot of bridal.
See, so confident I've got a hotel. We're gonna get free lunch.
It truly is a friends. Your friends, anybody you have, there's a lot of need service hours for various organizations, but we need your help on that people period. So there'll be more details to come.
Okay, so April 30th, double makeup. So if they work 2 hours, they get 4 hours makeup. What?
Community makeup hours, Judge Schwab.
And free lunch at your next Rotary meeting. And let's close with the 4-way pass.
No banner.
No chickens.
Yeah.
Gotta memorize.
The things.
Is it their laws? Will and their friendships. Will the officials all serve? And is it hard? I guess. It's